If you're watching this video, chances are you have gone through some sort of spiritual awakening, and since then, something inside of you has died. Whether it was a sudden event or a gradual process, you experienced a moment where your life shifted. It could have been a deep, mystical experience, an intense vision quest, meditation retreat, or simply a change of heart after reading a book. The first thing you may notice is that nothing was ever the same again. This is because something inside of you has been set into motion. Something big. Now, right after the initial shift, there was probably a period of euphoria. Everything seemed new, exciting, full of potential and possibility. But maybe those feelings didn't last too long, and you started feeling lost, confused, and alone. You may even feel as though you don't belong here anymore, as if you are meant to be somewhere else, doing something else, something more. Whatever it is, you know it isn't this. So today we're going to talk about what happens after you have awakened spiritually. Because as Carl Jung says, the first stage is always the most confusing. The majority of people who hear about Carl Jung for the first time think of him as the father of analytical psychology. However, his most important contribution to the world is his theory of the process of psychological development he calls individuation. According to Jung, the purpose of our lives is to realize our fullest potential and become whole by integrating our conscious and unconscious mind. In other words, to become one with our higher selves. In order to do so, we must go through a series of stages and challenges that force us to confront our deepest fears and integrate our shadow. So what does this mean? Let's start from the beginning. The moment you touch the unconscious, the ego dies. Ego is the conscious part of the psyche that builds our identity based on our beliefs, values, experiences, and memories. It is the part of us that makes decisions and takes actions. The ego starts dissolving the moment we begin to tap into the depths of our being. Why? Because in doing so, we start realizing how limited our perspective is. We discover there is much more to life than what we can see, hear, smell, taste, or touch. We encounter the mystery of existence and realize how little we actually know. We discover there is something bigger than ourselves at play, and that we're interconnected with all things. This realization leads to a humbling experience. Our ego, with its fixed ideas and opinions, starts crumbling down. After all, if everything we know and believe is challenged, what are we left with? Well, if we are honest, not much. And so when we start to explore the unknown, the ego starts to die. This is why awakening doesn't bring clarity, but opens up inner wounds. It creates a vacuum of sorts that can be very uncomfortable, a bit terrifying even, because the ego needs control and direction. Without it, we feel lost and confused. That's why you don't get any clear answers right away. Instead, you feel like there's a big question mark hanging over your head. Why am I here? Where am I going? What is my purpose? And perhaps the biggest one of them all, who am I? Here's the thing. None of these questions will be answered anytime soon. And that's okay. In fact, it's good. After all, if you seek the truth and find it, you stop looking. Your journey ends. But if you don't find any answers, you keep searching. And in doing so, you expand. You dive deeper into yourself and the world around you. We are told awakening is supposed to bring clarity and peace. But what we're not told is that it is also supposed to create a void, a space within the ego where the soul can step in and start guiding us. Many get stuck in this stage because they're scared to let go of their old identity. They desperately try to fill the void with new beliefs, teachings, and techniques. But it's not supposed to be filled. It's supposed to stay empty. Why? Because the soul cannot manifest itself in the presence of the ego. It can only reveal itself in the depths of our being. Here's the thing. The ego doesn't want to lose control. It doesn't want to acknowledge the bigger picture. It's afraid of the vastness of the unknown. So it clings onto whatever scraps of certainty it has left and tries to make sense of the chaos by creating new stories, new beliefs, new identities. It desperately tries to hold on to the illusion of control, but the stronger the ego resists, the harder the fall will be. And what's the biggest tool the ego uses to resist the soul? Symbols and archetypes. Think about it. When the ego starts dissolving, what do we cling on to? Symbols and archetypes. We project ourselves onto them and believe we're connected to something bigger, when really we're just escaping into the collective unconscious. We start chasing the divine mother archetype, the wise old man or the hero archetype, in hopes of finding guidance. But these figures aren't going to save us. Only we can do that. This is why Carl Jung talks about the dark night of the soul. It is the moment when the ego reaches its breaking point. It can no longer hold on to the fragments of the old self. And so everything that defines us, everything we thought we were, gets shattered. We're left broken, torn apart and bleeding. And it feels as though our souls have left our bodies. We're no longer connected to anything. Nothing makes sense anymore. Even our senses betray us. We feel physically sick, tired, drained, and hopeless. But Jung said, this is the moment of maximum growth. It is the moment when we're closest to death. It is the point of no return, and the ego has no choice but to let go. At this point, we can choose to give up or keep moving forward. Those who choose to move forward leave this world behind and enter another. They leave the land of the living and enter the realm of the dead. They go through the valley of the shadow of death and come out on the other side as someone completely different. Jung believed the confrontation with the shadow is the key moment in the process of individuation. For those who go through it, they emerge with a heightened sense of awareness. They develop a keen eye for detail and a deep understanding of human nature. Why? Because they have looked into the abyss, and the abyss has looked back. Many ask what happens after you awaken spiritually, but fail to recognize that it is not a single event, but a continuous process. A process that only comes to an end when we die physically. You don't have a single awakening and then you're done. Instead, we keep awakening again and again. We keep dying to the old self and being reborn as someone new. Each time we shed a layer and go deeper into ourselves. Here's the thing, we cannot be reborn spiritually before we are reborn emotionally and psychologically. Some of you might think you've experienced a spiritual awakening when really you've only experienced a mental one. You've had a shift in your consciousness, but nothing has changed internally. The proof of your awakening is not found in your thoughts, but in your actions. Have you changed anything? Do you behave differently now? Are you kinder, more compassionate and empathetic? If not, you haven't really changed. When the ego dies, it dies completely. There is no half an ego. We cannot choose to keep certain parts of our former self and discard the rest. No, we must lose everything, meaning values, relationships, possessions, roles and responsibilities, status, everything that once defined us. Why? Because all these things have served their purpose. They have helped us grow to this point, but we no longer need them. Now some might say, but what if I lose myself completely? What if I'm nothing without them? Then you've never really had them to begin with. You see, we don't lose ourselves. We find ourselves. We discover who we truly are beyond all the roles, masks, and labels we've been given. Let's be honest. Many of us run towards the spiritual path to escape the mess we've made of our lives. We think we can find peace by running away from our problems. But here's the thing, awakening doesn't bring peace. It brings confrontation. It doesn't bring clarity. It brings emptiness. It doesn't bring happiness. It brings suffering. It doesn't bring love. It brings loss. It's only after we have experienced the full depth of these states that we are able to integrate them into our lives. For many, this process is too much to handle. They can't deal with the pain, the loneliness, the uncertainty, and the fear. So they run back to the ego, back to the old ways of living. They would rather be miserable in their old life than embrace the uncertainty of the new one. But those who truly seek growth are willing to go through the pain. They are willing to sit with the discomfort and surrender to the process. Have you ever wondered why most gurus and teachers avoid talking about this topic? Why there are so few teachings on how to deal with the ego death? It's because most seekers aren't ready to hear the truth. They want to hear what they want to hear. They want to be told that they're enlightened and that their suffering has a purpose. They don't want to hear that they are still on the path and that they have a lot to learn. They want to be told that they're special, unique, and advanced. They want to be praised and put on a pedestal. And this is exactly what most gurus do. They tell their followers what they want to hear and make them feel special. They tell them they're enlightened and that they should be proud of themselves. I know it sounds harsh, but this is the truth. And if you can't handle the truth, you're not ready for it. You see, once you start talking about the dark side of spirituality, you can kiss your popularity goodbye. This is why most teachers shy away from it. At this point, you might be wondering, what if I don't want to embrace this path? What if I just want to go back to normal? Well, you can't. Once you've awakened, you can't unawaken. You're not going to sleep and wake up in the same place. You're going to wake up somewhere else entirely. You're going to wake up in the desert of your own being. Think of it like a maze. Once you've entered it, you can't turn back. You have to keep moving forward until you find the exit. You might get lost and wander around for a while, but eventually you'll find your way out. And what happens when you finally reach the exit? Well, that depends on you. If you're brave enough to walk through it, you'll find yourself in a completely different world. A world where everything is new and exciting. A world where you can finally be yourself. However, if you refuse to walk through the exit, you'll be trapped forever in the maze. You'll continue to suffer and struggle until you die. You've awakened. Now learn how to walk through the darkness. If you like this video, you might also enjoy this playlist with the best videos on awakening and Kundalini energy.